Hi, everyone. Welcome back to my channel, to Spiritual Conversations. Today, I have Dave Johnson. Now, just to explain a little bit about Dave Johnson, he does have a channel that he does channeling for political, and he also has an ambition. I'm sure we're going to see one, as he's also going to also transfer over to another channel where he's also going to have a spiritual aspect to his channel. I can't wait to see that and watch that grow. But you're on today. You're on with Spiritual Conversations, and my name is Sheila. And what we're going to talk about today is what is the impact of lack of spirituality and faith? And we've all experienced that. And then when we transform into spirituality and faith and what we found and how it worked for us. So right off the bat, I want for you to kind of introduce yourself, a little bit about yourself, a little bit how you got into spirituality, just a little bit, because we're going to get deeper. But yeah, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. So I'm Dave Johnson. My channel's Moonride. I am starting a new channel. I haven't figured out the name yet. I might ask viewers to help me with the name, but we'll find this out in the next few days. I do a bunch of different stuff, and one thing that might be an interesting point to make is I started with shamanism 30 years ago. Started actually in Hungary, where I was in the Peace Corps. I was really trying a bunch of different things and spiritual aspects. And that's one that just really, it's a long story, but it really connected with me. I had actually already started reading tarot cards, but I only read those for myself. I'm not really good enough to read for another person. They have always worked for me. So then there was shamanism, and it wasn't until I started watching people like Lena and Linda G that I kind of had an awareness then that I was going to channel. Maybe I knew about it just before I started seeing that stuff. I had a great channeling experience 20 years ago. But so I started doing that, but it's much more recent. Through the channeling work, when I have my clients, I just started to get guided to do other things. Like it wouldn't just be predicting. I would be doing these sort of healing sessions with people. And then I started being told like how to introduce this person to their guides. It was totally spontaneous. But after that, it became like, oh, people can use this process to meet their guides, and I'll teach them that. And then ultimately, most recently, some of the things that I was learning actually paralleled Dolores Cannon's past life regression. And literally, there were perfect parallels, like the pyramids I use, she uses, words she uses, I use. And that is sort of my gig. One gig that I'm doing right now is, if you've seen videos, you can see Sheila having her hypnosis. I call it healing hypnosis. It's not exactly like other people do it. Part of it really is direct. I've added a lot of elements. So that's what I do. On your topic, I find it really interesting that you ask, because I was, as a young person, raised in a totally agnostic family, right? And I didn't have any psychic, nobody psychic, nobody does anything except my aunt, my favorite aunt, Lissa. She did say that she'd had psychic experience, and she's like, they were very provable sort of psychic experience. My aunt did not. She was a stewardess and did not get on a plane, and the plane crashed. Right. And it was like she had a premonition about this, and it caused her, a lot of guilt, I think. But she didn't feel comfortable enough worrying people. But several things like that happened. So, of course, everybody in the family's like, yeah, whatever. Practical Midwestern people, we believe in the truth, I had a negative experience when I was in sixth grade, where there was this boy from my class that was invited me over to his house, and we were going to go to this concert. Well, the concert turned out to be a one of those like Baptist conversion events. There was no music. it was really him like literally pushing me to get onto the stage to have my religious conversion. And there was a moment where I was like, I'd love to be part of the group and experience the group feeling that they're having. And then there was another moment where I was like, ew, you tricked me, and then his father, it was like Los Angeles. It was like a 25-minute drive between a person's house, right? And on the drive, he lectured me the whole time and told me how mean I was, that I didn't find Jesus. And it's just like, I went to my 6th grade class, actually, maybe it was 7th grade. And in the class, I said, I'm an atheist. This
Ooh,
is all.
that's a good place to place this, where keep your thought there, because where it says, what is the impact of the lack of spirituality? So that's a
Right,
good place, because what we have is those experiences that we start rejecting anything that everybody is offering,
right.
right? Because we're not feeling it. It doesn't look good. I remember sitting in Sunday school myself, and they're telling me all these things that I need to do to get to heaven, and I think I'm screwed. You know what I mean? I am
Yeah.
absolutely screwed. So I knew that everybody else in the room was probably going to heaven, but not me. I'm going to hell, because
Yeah.
I knew what they were handing me didn't feel right, and I couldn't make it fit. And so as a child, I literally walked out of that knowing that I was completely different. I just didn't know. I just didn't understand. So there's a little thing here from Adrian Huffington, where she says, what is the impact of lack of spiritual faith? And she says, without faith in a higher order and the existence of something outside of ourselves and our everyday life, life can become emotionally unbearable and filled with fear. And I experienced that. And this anxiety, even if we're not aware of it, will surface in other parts of our lives. Many of us spend a large part of our lives barricading walls, right? Barricading ourselves against the truth that the ultimate reality lies beyond ourselves, right? I can do this. I can do this. I'm the one choosing this. I'm the one's running my life. I remember that as well, being very, very egocentric and very arrogant about that. But freedom from fear cannot be found through the mind, only through the soul. And that was a really good thing. Is like, I cannot think my way out of this ego maniac cesspool that I was in. So I really want to kind of hear about I am atheist. What
Right.
road, what kind of structurally or unstructurally life that you started down because you rejected all of that before you were really, really embracing it?
Well, I almost want to say that it was like a useful functioning phase. It was like, I do believe, rationality has been oversold. Everybody in school taught us how to do math. Nobody taught the logic of the heart. Like, you meet someone, you just get the creeps. That's real. Okay. You got to listen to that. Nobody taught us that. And,
Right.
you notice women are better at that than men for the most part, because it's easier for them to access. So as a 12-year-old, I remember saying that, and of course the class was shocked and the teacher was shocked. Now this is Los Angeles in the 70s, so people weren't that shocked, right? They were just like, oh. And then I remember having a conversation with my sort of family friend Shirley, and she's like, well, tell me more about this. And she's like, you're not really atheist, you're really an agnostic. You're really just wait and see. But I have to say, there was a really negative impact. A person who claims to be religious who isn't, that's like, you're going to just say that, well, everybody who's religious isn't. And that's not actually true. It's just because one person's one way doesn't mean everybody's that way, right? Just as I've made mistakes, that doesn't mean I'm always mistaken, right? So there were a lot of years of, I had a long walk home in Los Angeles of me just thinking about it and really going, God, yeah, well, how could one religion be true? Like, why would God send out hundreds of religions and just say only one's true? And it's like a class where you get tested, and I also remember thinking, if heaven is an exclusive club that keeps some people out, I don't want to be a member. That's not the kind of God that I want. And I just remember being quite young and having these like real reflections. And then a couple of interesting things happened. It wasn't really so much on my plate, but I did think a lot about these things. And then by 15, I went to a house where my friend was babysitting and it was haunted. And it was clearly haunted. Things were moving through the room. We were absolutely freaked out and terrified. And we actually took the baby and went to the neighbor. And more things happened. Like the next day, the family moved out, and they said that like the piano was in the kitchen and you couldn't physically, all this stuff went on. And I just remember going, there's something more than logic in this society. And right around soon thereafter, I just was experiencing driving in a car with my brother. And I just had this moment where I'm like, everything's the way it's supposed to be. Yeah, there are problems, but the problems that we're having are the ones that we're supposed to know. And I just had this sort of experience where, and now I would call it Satori, right? Of just it's like that moment of meditation when you're like, yeah, there's good and evil, but it's ultimately good. And you can't explain that to someone, you just feel it. And I didn't know where that feeling came from. So thereafter, I was so moved by it. I was so rejuvenated in a way by it. I felt so much optimism for a human race that I was like, I'm going to find out what that is. I'm going to find out what that feeling is. I want to know more. I want to know more. So the distinction between the two really was, before that, I didn't have that feeling of, hey, it's going to be okay. I really was like, oh God, there's so much going on here, and God, where's my place? And, what's the point? And, even at 14, I was just quite lost.
That's what she is talking about, filled with fear. And that's one of the things that I think we all kind of experience from the get-go. The sky is falling, right? That fear of everything just not working out. Nothing's gonna be okay. I too had those ideas. I'm like, why isn't the oldest religion the one that's right? They know more than what we do. You know what I mean? Like, and then the natives what they believed in, I'm like, that makes way more sense than this religion that they're introducing to me. I mean, I also had these huge doubts. One of the things that created was in me the religion. I'm not going to speak up the religion because this religion could be helping somebody, but in my religion, we were over in Germany, and they were so happy one day that they were finally allowing the African American men to hold the priesthood. And I thought, wait a minute. You mean God didn't allow this Black man to hold the priesthood in this church?
Right.
This can't be right, right? I mean, I literally had that. This cannot be true. This cannot be right. And it was like from that day on, I was only like 7 years old. And from that day on, I rejected everything about this religion. I couldn't express it because I had to live in my home, right? But inside, I said, that cannot be right. And so I also had that. But when we're talking about the fear, filled with fear, so the opposite of faith, of course, is fear, right? Nothing's going to work out. I'm not going to be okay. The sky is falling. So let's talk a little bit about your fear prior to you accepting the faith part, where you said that I finally came to a conclusion that everything is going to be okay.
Fear is an interesting word. I just felt more like disunity. Like, I don't understand what's the point of me? What's the point of this universe? What's the point of me experiencing this? It was just sort of a haphazard experience. And I would say, like, if you watch like Dr. Joe Dispenza, it really is just reactive. This bad thing happened. I got a B on a test. I reacted. I changed friendships groups. I reacted. It was just sort of me reacting to anything. It was almost like there was no real purpose except for me to react. I don't necessarily remember being fearful per se, except because my parents were pretty agnostic. So they're just like, be a good person, that's just, be a good person. That was it. Maybe there's a God, but if there is one, you should do it because you love him or her, and not because you are afraid. And I
Mm.
actually literally remember my father saying that. So it was just a little bit of somehow when I discovered the spirituality, it unified me. And also, when I discovered that spirituality, it gave me a reason, a direction. Before that, I didn't have so much of a direction. And there were some elements of fear, maybe now that you mention it, like, why are these bad things happening to me? What am I doing wrong? How come, if there is a God, how come it's chosen these terrible things to happen? How
Why am I
come?
being such abused by this loving God that you guys keep on talking about?
And why is there evil at all?
Yes, why did I get
In
it? Yes, why is
God,
this happening? Why is that? Yes, I remember
yeah,
those days too, where it was so impactful and so confusing to me.
yeah,
It's like being in an alleyway and watching all this destruction around you, and you have
mm,
no idea how to save yourself. You have no idea how to protect yourself, or for me, it was children. Like I have no idea how to protect these. And it was just like that lack. It was just, I felt lack in my life so much. And it
yeah,
says from the freedom of fear cannot be found through the mind. And
yeah,
that's one thing. I'm a Gemini, right? I am cerebral. I think everything first. And once I started, it's almost like watching a tentacle come out of my head and a tentacle come out of my heart, and I connected it. And it was like, oh, wait, you know what I mean? I
mm,
have another avenue to explore. I have another way of being. So that's where we want to I want to kind of go with you, where it talks about with Deepak Chopra, where it says, what is spiritual power? You see, it's a paradox. When we, it talks about the spirit brings power. That's the
mhm,
paradox, right? Because the spirit's path to power involves surrender. Now, I really want to go into a lot of things that you had to surrender in order to open up enough to do that. Because I see a lot of people, well, I believe in God, but you haven't surrendered a dang thing. You haven't surrendered
yeah,
your ego. You haven't surrendered, your actions that you're doing out there, all of these things and
mm,
humility and forgiveness and acceptance. Now that's the pathway to connecting with their spiritual power. It's
mhm,
not easily done, and I can't imagine what it would be like for you. I mean, you are a gay man in a man's world. That has to be some sort of impactment
yeah.
in your life. So, yeah, talk to me about your involved in your surrender, your humility, and your forgiveness and your acceptance, and how you found some of your spiritual paths. And we're going to get into your spiritual paths.
Sure. So, one thing I found interesting about what you said was, that was my significant problem, being a gay man in the man's world. And then when I was a kid in the 70s, I knew by three, something's different about me. I totally knew.
Right.
And that was in the 70s, it was not easy to know that. It was very much a difficulty, something that I had to hide. I always felt I was being judged. It was very,
Yeah.
very hard. So, many young people who are spiritual when you're young, you encounter a lot of trouble. It's like somehow that builds up your intuition. It's just, I often see clients really difficult childhoods, like they have to be psychic to survive.
Yeah.
My problem that, we're not really in my family, which was a very loving family, and which, even though they kind of had a feeling this kid's not straight, they did everything they can to support me. I truly was lucky in that sense. But school was a nightmare. It was just a constant, really difficult. So when I think of fear and pre-spirituality, that is actually more what I think of, that just difficulty. I also sometimes think like I'm almost like in the dominant culture in some ways so that I understand it, but I'm also outside that culture. So I'm able to view it. So, You want to know what white males think? I can tell you because I've been in there. I've been in the gym with them. I know what they're like.
Yeah, we'll have that as another
Another topic.
another video. What do they think?
Right, right. So yeah, that there was that way very much was part of the trajectory. And I was also really an arty kid. I was like, my parents would go to the theater, and if my dad couldn't go, my mom would always take me from like 6, and I would be totally patient and watch these very sophisticated things with her, and I'd totally get it. We'd have this discussion. It's very interesting. And I'll also tell you, I'm a very analytical and rational person. I studied English lit and philosophy is where I get my A's, right?
Yeah.
English, I got a B plus, but philosophy is where I could read anything and get it.
So what did you have to do when that one moment when you had to pretend to be straight and you made that decision out of safety?
Yeah.
And the lack of awareness of your audience? What did that do to your spirit?
It's really detrimental. It was very, very hard to grow up in that time. At some places on the planet Earth, it's a lot easier. But when I was a kid, it was like, words describing gay people were constantly thrown from one child to another. There was no, you couldn't say a racist word in public like that, at least where I lived. But that was a common occurrence. It was very hard to know, like almost anybody, if they picked it up, could use it against you.
Yeah.
And I was not
in the 70s. You were in danger.
Physical danger. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Physical danger.
Yeah, I had to fist fight my way through school.
Yeah.
And it was an interesting thing. I was a school teacher for foreign students for many years. And I'd ask them, when was your first fist fight? All these Korean kids, French kids, I'd be like, what are you talking about? I'm like, didn't you fist fight? Didn't you start fist fighting at 7? And they're like, no, Dave, we don't fight in Korea. And I did, and I had to. It was not optional. So, it is detrimental. And I would just, say that I think it's an important message for young, ambiguously sexuality kids today to know, I feel great empathy for you. There is work to be done. You do
Was there an element of self-hatred in there for you?
Oh, yeah.
Let's talk about that. I think that's where your fear was placed.
Yeah. And I did everything to be straight. I was like, oh, maybe if I changed this, maybe if I did more exercise, maybe if I did this, you're a 12-year-old kid, and those things are important. I did everything I could. By 17, I tried dating girls that were, totally, sexually inaccessible. It's like very safe dating. And
he's not going to want this. I want her.
Yeah. And the beautiful, very beautiful, very, very, very beautiful. And I was like, if I date the most beautiful girl, I will become a heterosexual. And no, it did not work. It was until I moved to San Francisco at 22. It was a perpetual worry. I did run a gay and lesbian student union in my junior college. But it was a battle. People ripped our signs down. We had our club had different rules than other people. So it was, that was the sort of mountain that I had to climb. I think women have to climb a certain mountain, and that was specifically mine.
Well, I honestly have to tell you, I have no experience in being something that society absolutely tried to do away with. Okay. I have no experience in how that can feel. I wouldn't even be here to explain that to nobody, right? You're the perfect person to do that. So then now let's circle back around to where you picked up because some of them go down the worst one. I mean, to suicides, to crime, I mean, they really take a path down a really, really bad place. But you were able to circle back around and pick up spirituality. Now, can you think of the time and the moment that gave you information, or where did that come from? Where did you go, I can be gay, I can be in this world, I can love spirit, I can love you, you can love me? You know, where did that get there?
Well, again, I want to circle back to my family, because whatever their wackiness was, they were never homophobic. And I can specifically tell specific times where I know my mom took someone aside and said, don't ever say that in front of my kid again. Right. Or you're never coming to my house.
That's
like she
important.
was really awesome. You know, my dad too was really awesome. Very, you know, my dad worked in Hollywood, so he had friends that gave him jobs that were gay. So I had a huge advantage. And to those gay and lesbian people out there who are young, or if you're bisexual or transsexual, I really advise, you know, find good mentors. Find people, if they're not in your family, who are going to let that be okay, and not sexual partners. I mean, mentors who are really there to help you. They are out there. You can find them, and they will be really, really helpful. And I think that moment that I was experienced, that sort of Satori moment in the car, that I think somehow, and you're very right, it's a feeling. It's not something you could explain.
Yeah, it's
But
not here.
yeah, it's not here. That is what changed. And it's somehow like I connected to the whole body in that sense, connected to the whole universe in that way. And thereafter, I was always, you know, I was around pretty bohemian intellectual type people. That was my like group in high school, the one that was most open to homosexuality. Those were my friends. And I did come out to them at 17. But, you know, I was the one sort of, you know, bohemian intellectual type that was actually religious, in a sense, or I should say spiritual. So in a way, it also made me. It's like I wasn't just this clique. I was within that clique, but I would have these arguments like, how do you know that's true? Or, yeah, sure, if you've never experienced it, you won't know. But I did have this experience. So I think that was the real change. Other things just topically changed in the sense that, you know, if you remember like Madonna, Boy George, when those happened, there was actually a huge wave of social change that happened.
Yes.
So all of the sudden, you know, the fact that this guy in school was not necessarily straight actually started to pique a lot of people's interest.
Yes.
And some people were like, oh, that's interesting. That's unusual. That's cool. And, you know, you're in the suburban Los Angeles. There's not much that's interesting, you know, so there was a shift. It didn't all become positive immediately, but suddenly I was a little bit more accepted in my culture. That helped.
So this is great information, because it's almost like I think spirit hands us moments after moments after moments for us to take advantage of.
Mm-hmm.
And you started getting those nuggets. Somebody, you know, just here, take this one, take this. And finally, at some point in time, something happened where you started paying attention. It was the acceptance of others and the acceptance of yourself, where the opening and the cracks started to happen, where spirit was able to get in and make some serious change within your spirit and your soul. And I think that's one thing that you're like, how do we get spirit? Well, pay attention.
Right.
Gather your attentions and focus on that. And that is one thing that I want to put out there also as a stepping stone. Start paying attention. It doesn't take much to recognize what is going on in this world if you just sit back and take a deep breath and just watch, right? And you started to do that. You were starting to get lots of great feedback from the universe, from the world, where you were at. And some LGBTQ, they do not have families that support them.
Yeah.
And so you're right, you did have that advantage in that.
Mhm.
And a lot of times down here it says not exactly qualities we associate with power people. In the ego world, power means having the ability to control circumstances to your benefit and manipulate and dominate people in order to get your own way. If what you want is the greatest good for everyone, ego has little to say. So it's that busting of that ego. I am not all that in a bag of chips, and I don't think everybody thinks that about, you know what I mean? And to just remove the ego part where you know, the kindness of the strength of giving and selflessness and the devout, the trusting, the patience, you know, that descending into, I am here to help. I'm not here to control. I can't do anything about your spirituality, but I can, you know, possibly give you a message. And if you take it, that's okay. It's not mine, you know? And so this is where I think our spirituality has come full circle in what we do as readers, is we put that information out there, and we let it go the moment we put it in a video. It's not ours anymore. It's up to you as to how you want to take that. And so I also want to talk about, you have a litany of lists of things that you do, and we all do, right? We all started somewhere. So what was your first, and how did that change you, and how did that bring you to the next and to the next and to the next?
So the first thing that I did, actually, well, it was the tarot cards. I wound up in a very short relationship, which actually was very profound in its possibilities. And so I went out and bought myself a set of tarot cards. And I started to read them. They were really interesting and very accurate. Again, it took me a while to figure out, you know, here, how much is my ego and how much is the real. But a really interesting thing happened in college. And I went specifically to SF State because they had more philosophy, but it was more spiritual, right? It was a bit more like, hey, study Buddhism. You know, Berkeley would have been like strict, you know, very like modern meta philosophy. So I had this class, and it was the best class ever. It was so good. Everybody fell in love with this teacher. Her name is Dr. Tandiaka. If you ever get a chance, if she still teaches, she's a big, beautiful black lady with a flat top, and she just came to the class, and everybody's just like, 5 people. I'm like, I need to drop the class. She was so intense. And the rest of us were like, I'm in love. It's like that kind of class. And at the end of the semester, one of the students was writing a book on channeling. I didn't know what channeling was. And I'm like, what is that? And she just like had this conversation. Last day of class, she said, you want to try it? And I'm like, what are you talking about? She goes, yeah, me and my friends are going to be channeling tonight, and you're welcome to come. And she invited me, the assistant wrestling coach, you know, not the guy that you think is all woo-woo. He turned out to be quite a profound person, and another lady. And we go there, and this channeling is the best I've ever encountered. They and I don't encourage this, used a Ouija board, and they just use it as a jumping off point. And I'd be like, okay, who was that ghost that visited me when I was 12? And they're like, oh, it was grandma. She wanted to say this. She wants to channel now. Here's this. And I was just, all of us were just like, there's no way anyone could know this. No way. And then we went all night long. There no money changed hands. We just drank coffee, and in those days I smoked cigarettes. And I never, until like 5 years ago, I knew this was a profound experience, but I never thought that I would do that. I went home, and it's like 5 o'clock in the morning. I go to my house, and I open under the sink, the door under the sink, and a Seth book literally fell out of the top of the trash and landed in front of me. And I'm just like,
what book was it? A Seth.
And that Seth was Seth. Yeah, the Seth. This was some of the earliest channeling books.
Okay.
I'd never heard of Seth. I didn't know anything about this, but I look at it and I'm just like, you gotta be kidding me, So
Now you're just showing off, right? That's what I always say. You're just showing off now.
That was a really profound moment where I was like, this level of coincidence, it's simply not possible. And it was obvious the mess. Like sometimes I'd randomly open the book, and the answer that I was thinking about in that day would be there. I think there's also one thing I'd point out is, the value of people like Abraham Hicks.
Mm-hmm.
Notice she's not political. I know Republicans who follow her and stuff like that. Is that she's shown everybody how you can create a reality. Yeah. Right. You can sit there and you can imagine yourself having fantastic health. And if you do this in a way, it'll work. And I think that she's like kind of a moving, from there, people can move into, well, hey, if I can change this about my life, I can change everything about my life. And the universe is listening to me. And I think that is an important point to touch on, is that these sort of things can be touchstones into your spirituality. I find if I get off track, I will go and I'll meditate and go, Dave, what do you really want here?
Yeah.
First, what you want. And then I just go, okay, well, I'd really like a career that I'm good at, and then I will imagine myself with that, and I will focus on those emotions, and I'll push them and make them stronger. And it works. It's like the next week that changed. And for me, things work really quickly, positive or negative. So if I'm in a bad place, somebody will punch me in the face.
No, we don't hit no more. So we get it out of that. We grow up and we don't hit no more. But so your catalyst, so you were introduced to shamanism, so that kind of resonated with you. And then you went to channeling. So what other aspects? Well, channeling went to past life regression kind of a thing. So what made you interested in that? Was it something in your past life that you were interested? Sometimes I went and got tarot cards because I wanted to know what was going on in my life, or I would go, things like that would happen to me a lot. Although I realized I cannot do tarot cards for myself for nothing. I am not one of those. Somebody else has to throw some cards for me because I don't know why.
Well, really, there was a tarot cards, again, just sort of a generic interest. There was that one channeling experience, but it was just the one. But that really piqued my interest. And then I was really getting more focused on the philosophy. I shouldn't leave this out, is when I was in the Peace Corps, somebody invited me to talk to this channel. And I mean, talk about layers and layers and layers of coincidences. Just like ridiculous. I mean, it's like really, really ridiculous how obvious these coincidences happened. So that's when I'm like, okay, here's an actual practice that I can do. And I saw this shaman 3 times, and he was really, really wise. So I'd go and ask this question, and he'd be like, that's not your real question today, is it? I go, well, no. And he goes, why don't we just worry about who you are today? And I'm like, okay. He knew. He took one look at me and he's like, that guy's a shaman. This is bad. I didn't know that. But every time I would go, we'd find our place in the circle every single time. Wow. I'd find the place in the circle and he would sit next to me.
Wow.
And it was just like, we sort of danced in the circle and sat down. I would always be to his left. And I'm like, this is weird. People would keep coming up to me and asking me questions like I knew what I was doing. I'm like, well, but I had a practice. And what I love about shamanism is it's yours. You go see one shaman, see another shaman, see him, you see her, and that's all good. You take what's useful for you. And then I would just practice. I would just practice right here on my floor. And, I meet my guides. I don't have so many experience of others teaching me stuff. It really was mostly about me just sitting on the ground, coming up with a question. What do I want to know? Meeting my power animal, which after the first time you're familiar with, and then he would take me on a little tour, and then I would sort of interpret what that means, right? So one example would be I was having trouble with my shoulder. I go and I see another power animal, it's a seal, and the seal's like, swim like this. And I'm like, whatever. I don't know. Okay, that's not really what's that mean? And the next day I went to the doctor, and the doctor's like, don't swim like this for the time being. Swim like a seal. And I'm just like, okay, you got it. But it's really like I really encourage, and it doesn't matter what you're practicing, practice on your own. The
Right.
spirituality should not come just from somebody telling you what to do. It's yours. No one can do shamanism the way you do it. No one can be a Wiccan the way that you are a Wiccan.
Correct.
And if something isn't working for you, or you don't particularly like that person, there are other people from which you might take. I really encourage people to go to different schools, take what you like. So I worked literally, that was the most work I did. And I did a lot of it on my own. I did learn some things. I did have some ancestor training, which I really recommend. Have some ancestors in each of my direction. And then I got inspired to start to lead groups, which I did in San Francisco. And they were, really, there was one day where I got psychic information about someone. And it was like, oh, yeah, she needs this. And then she would ask her question, and that would be there. And then, like, oh, okay. And then one day that I got, touch him on the shoulder. He's almost there, but if you touch him on the shoulder, he'll get there. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to just randomly touch person. But after a couple of times, then I'm like, hey, everybody, is it okay if I touch you? It won't be anything weird. And then I started to do that. So in the shamanism, I started to get even beyond shamanism kind of stuff, or at least what I knew about that.
Right.
So that was sort of the next section, and that was the longest section. And again, I really love it because you can practice on your own. You can, really explore that, especially if you go into nature. Feathers would I'd be meditating and a feather would drop into my lap. I'd put a fire out, and I'd wake up in the morning and the fire would somehow have started and be roaring. I'd be like all of these things. It was really fun. And then I, at some point, trust me, America's a difficult place to live. It's really a tough, tough place. And for
America
all of
restricts. It has such, even in our culture, with reading tarot cards, right? If you read a tarot card, it means this. If you read it wrong, something happened. If you didn't ask the right question, it's not going to come out correctly. You know what I mean? And I've been always preaching and said, I cannot and should not ever believe that I can speak for spirit. I am not that powerful. Right? I do not have that ability. Spirit has that ability, and my job is to work on my ability to read and to understand what spirit is telling me. That's it. That's all my job is. And I think that's exactly what it is. You do you. You do it your way. Never apologize for your own way of connecting with spirit or the cards or your practice or anything like that. I'm a full believer in that. It is yours, and your own personal relationship with spirit is sacred in all levels. So I know we could talk for like 3 or 4 more hours. Sure. But I really appreciate you diving deep into what it felt like for you to be in this world without spirituality and then with spirituality, and how much better we're doing, right? We're not, and I don't have a plate that comes around and I put $10 in to get my spirituality. That I think is the best thing ever, right? It's free for everyone, and everyone can attach themselves to spirit. And that's the one message that I like to. So.
And it's yours.
And it's yours.
It's yours. No one can ever take it away from you.
Yes.
And you'll find that if you just questions about life are easier, it's a lot. It's, whatever terrible things happening, you can go, all right, what's the meaning of this?
Yeah.
Take it quite so personally. Why is the universe sending me this lesson? What am I supposed to learn here? It might be a really hard lesson and unpleasant. Yeah. But if it's not just, oh, woe is me, this terrible thing, it really gives you an edge. And in my experience, things work out better as I would, read tarot cards to see if the money would come through on my job,
Right.
it was 100% accurate. So it calmed me down and it got me to continue doing things that I might have quit. It's yours. You do it what you will, and don't let anybody tell you you have to do it XYZ way.
Correct.
You be the first person that does it in your way. No one is going to do it the way that you do it. Every spot in the universe, every one of us is like a diamond. We reflect everyone else. We're perfect in our own trajectory of learning. And you take one diamond away, the whole universe collapses. Everyone has something, their own personal experiences, their own story that's essential to the story of the universe.
Absolutely.
I'm curious to ask you about you. When did that happen for you? When did you go from atheist to, wow, hey, there's something?
Well, interesting enough, I had children and I had gotten a divorce because I couldn't find a good man to save my soul, and I kept on saying, where are they at? And somebody looked at me and said, Sheila, you're attracting them. I'm like, well, I gotta stop that. Right? Let's get on that. Right.
Uh-huh.
So I was so sick of it. And that kind of gave me a look within, and starting to realize that if I'm attracting something that I really, really don't want, then it got me into muscle testing. What am I eating? What am I acting like? Where do my health, my emotions, my mental, and it just took me on a really, really bizarre a journey on the chakras. I got to clean out my chakras so that the energy can run through. I mean, through all of that, just trying to fix me in order to attract a good man literally started the journey. Isn't that weird?
That is so funny.
And then I end up very, very, very single. I don't know what the answer to that is, but I end up very single. I did attract a good man. However, he did pass, right? And I go, oh, I only got to have him for 5 years. Dang it, right? And how did I manifest short term? What? It was just so bizarre. But yeah, it was literally trying to find a partner that I could live with, because nobody can stand a liar, cheater, sloth. I just couldn't take it no more. And I'd be more than happy to marry a gay man. That's what I always said. I'd be more than happy to marry, because they are wonderful. They dress right. They're clean. They work. You know what I mean? They're intelligent. Yeah. I always joked about that, but of course, and I always sit there and go, I said the gay men get the better man. I don't know what happened, but the gay men get the better man. But anyhow, thank you so much for this, and I will have you back on next month. We're going to have another subject, so he is going to be the regular on this channel for us. So look forward to that. So,
well, before we go, Shaman, I do want to congratulate you on your trajectory, because I think you and I are just an example of really regular people. We're just regular people with regular problems, and regular lives and regular concerns. That you're just your trajectory, the way that I've watched you move forward, is really it's inspirational, I think, for all of us. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. You too. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm just a regular girl. Just a regular girl sitting in Colorado Springs, having to go to the grocery store just like everybody else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, all right, everyone. Thank you so much. If you made it this far, thank you so much. And yeah, bye.
Bye-bye.